So I kind of put the pieces together. Like long COVID sounds a lot like post viral fatigue, which sounds a lot like CFS. This could very well be the same thing. So I did what I knew what to do, which was go back into the Facebook forums, but this time I entered the long COVID community. And in the long COVID community, yes, there were people experiencing essentially the same thing I was, but the tone was a little bit different because in the CFS community, it's more of a you're stuck in this, you're never going to get out, don't even try type of thing. And the vibe around the long COVID community is this is going to last a while, it's going to suck, but by the way, it gets better and people get out of this. You just got to be patient and just kind of deal with it while it sucks for now, but you'll be fine. So I noticed a lot more people were recovering from the long COVID community after like 6 months. And a lot of their stories, because they do like an every Friday, you post like what helped you get out for people who are fully recovered and on the other side and are kind enough to tell you how they got out. And a lot of their stories pointed back to the autonomic nervous system. And that's when I had like a major mind shift of like, I almost had like Vietnam flashbacks of like me being in the hospital, the guy telling me I was going to be okay. And just from that news, I felt better. Every time I started a program and I felt safe because I thought this was the thing that was going to save me, I felt better.
Hey friends, welcome back. I'm here today with Junior Kai. Junior is going to be sharing a bit of his story of living with and fully recovering from a pretty severe case of chronic fatigue syndrome, or ME/CFS.
Hey Raelan. Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm really happy to be here.
Stick around to the end because Junior is going to lay out exactly step by step what allowed him to fully recover. Because I know sometimes in videos we can only make sort of general references to brain training programs or resetting your nervous system, but people are left not really sure what that means and what they can implement in their lives. So if Junior's story and if his recovery, resonates with you and sounds like something you might want to give a try, if it's something that you and your trusted healthcare medical professionals think is a good idea, you'll have everything you need to try to implement that. So when Junior first reached out to me, I just want to read a quick clip from his email. He wrote, "Hi, Raelan. I was sick for 2.5 years, but I finally fully recovered. I dreamed of one day being able to do this interview. I watched your recovery story while laying in a hospital bed with barely any hope. And now here you are." And I just wanted to share that because I think it's something that resonates for many people, myself included, many of us very sick, imagining a day when we get to tell our story and then what it feels like to be here finally doing that.
Yeah, I remember being in that hospital bed. It was rough. And the thing is, when you have like no hope, when you want your life back, all it takes is just one story to kind of just trigger that thing in your mind where it's like, oh, it's possible. This is not something that everyone has to live with. And that was the thing that like I really hung on to all the way till the end. So thank you for that, Raelan.
But yeah, so let's jump right in. Can you take us back? How did this all start for you?
I was a very active individual, somebody who, I live in Florida, so I'm somebody who used to work full time and go to Disney very often as well. The weather is also very hot, but I continue to stay pretty active, even in the hot weather. I'm a very type A personality, always like go, 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 never really took the time to take a break. That's just how my life was set up. And I was really just hyper-focused on just being this successful person, this person that was always busy, this person that always found himself looking to improve and to be better. I found through that I was taking work very seriously. I was doing 40 to 45 hours a week. And then after work, I would actually clock out and me and my girlfriend would go to Disney and walk a few miles after that. And then eat at Disney. I'd get home at maybe 10, 11 o'clock at night. And then we would go to bed. And I would do it all over again. Wake up 5 a.m, do that. Obviously, looking back, that wasn't sustainable. I really recommend nobody live that type of life. If you're watching this video, you obviously don't live that type of life right now. So, but yeah, I did that throughout all of 2019, or at least the majority of 2019. And I remember, I think it was August, I was walking down the hallway of where I worked, which was a pretty big hospital in the area. And I noticed the floor starting to bounce as if I was walking on a trampoline. So that was my first sign of me getting sick, not knowing it. Lo and behold, I freaked out because I've never felt like that before. So what did I do is I walked my bouncy self straight to the emergency room because it was right down the hall. They told me maybe I was a little bit dehydrated. Other than that, totally fine. And then next week happened again. Freaked out again, but I just drank water and symptoms seemed to go away. So I was like, okay, it was possibly dehydration. So then as the following weeks went on, I started getting more and more strange symptoms. The walking and bouncing, like feeling like I was on a trampoline. And then I started getting dizzy. And then I started feeling like shaky and weak. And the first thing that comes to my mind is, okay, I'm really dehydrated. So that's when I just started carrying a water bottle around with me 24/7, just chugging water all day, every day. And I thought that was the key. I thought I was just neglecting my hydration. But as I was drinking water, I noticed the symptoms still came and they were still getting worse. So that's when I started to freak out and say, okay, maybe this is not dehydration. So took myself to the emergency room again after a flare-up of symptoms, told me everything was fine. That's when I began to worry about maybe there could be something wrong here. Something is getting like to look off a little bit. So I started researching stuff online on what it possibly could be. And that was probably the worst possible thing I could have done in my situation because I saw things like dementia, early onset dementia, your pre-stroke, and that just sent me down an entire rabbit hole. So I'm getting confirmation from the doctors that nothing's wrong with me. But I'm feeling these very real symptoms. Going to the emergency room, all my blood tests are coming back normal. And then after that, I just lived in that state of worry for a month. That sustained for about a month. And then after that period, I started noticing I got what I thought was food poisoning very often from eating foods that I would normally eat anyway. So found myself scheduling an appointment for, what do they call those stomach doctors, Raelan? I totally blanked.
I'm not sure. I can never keep track of all the different specialists.
I know I had an endoscopy and a colonoscopy. I forgot just going to call it a GI doctor. I scheduled an appointment with my GI doctor, and he told me I needed an endoscopy and colonoscopy. So I underwent that procedure. Nothing came back. That's when I started freaking out because now I have the bouncing on a trampoline thing, and I'm dizzy, and I'm weak all the time. Now I'm anxious because of my symptoms, and I can't eat food. Now we have a problem. And as the year went on, I just kept getting more and more worried, and the more and more symptoms decided to pop up. And at this point, we're nearing the end of the year, and then I contracted what was just the standard flu at the end of the year. But after I came out of the flu, I noticed I had unbelievable fatigue. And on top of all my pre-existing symptoms that I already had. And then the gut issues got much worse too. And then that was my first onset of brain fog. And then from there, I looked into more stuff online and then came to the conclusion I may have post-viral fatigue, but my symptoms came on a lot earlier than before I got the flu. So I may or may not. So I went through that entire thing thinking I had post-viral fatigue, still continued to push through work, and I still continued to try to go to Disney and hang out with my girlfriend every now and then. And it just got too overwhelming to the point where in January, I eventually pushed maybe just a little bit too hard and I had my first crash. So now we're in crash mode.
You were getting all these symptoms. Doctors didn't seem to really know what was going on. You weren't getting a lot of information about what you're supposed to do. And then you had your first crash. So what was that like? And what was going through your head through all of this?
Yeah, first crash. Scariest freaking day of my life. I woke up and for the first time ever, I had the tinnitus, the ringing in my ears. And I had fatigue so bad to the point where it was almost painful. It was like deep in my bones. I had the joint pains. I felt nauseous, headache, dizziness, the whole 9 yards. I was wired, like, I felt like electricity was, like, shooting up and down my body. Again, I went to the emergency room, and they did every blood test that they could that I requested, and everything seemed to come back normal, and they told me they suggested, "Hey, this could possibly be very high anxiety, since there's actually nothing wrong with you." And I greatly took offense to that, that something this severely debilitating could have anything to do with anxiety or my mental state or anything like that. Just because the experience was so physical, you know? I understand there is a mind body connection, but to be this physical, there's no, and back then I thought there's no way. So from the hospital, I ended up going home because obviously at this point I'm starting to lose faith in the doctors. This is like the sixth or seventh time I've been to the emergency room now. So I decided to just take matters into my own hands and use the good old internet. Lo and behold, I found a lot of things from the past linking from post-viral fatigue syndrome to chronic fatigue syndrome. And I found a few Facebook groups that I
Mm.
ended up joining. Worst decision I probably could have ever made in my life because when you're in these groups, you're just asking for reassurance because you don't know what's going on. Like, hey, does everyone have this symptom? Does anyone have this symptom? How do you handle this? And you would always get like 500 different replies, and every single reply was different. So, what did I do with my type A personality is I take every single suggestion and I cut it out of my life completely. So, my circle of things that I was able to do went from like this to like this. And the worst part was not only the symptoms, it was the food questions. So I would ask questions of like, hey, does anybody have a sensitivity to this specific food? I could tolerate this before. I can't do it anymore. Does anyone have a, sensitivity to any certain foods? Can anyone throw out any suggestions? Again, I got like 200 replies. Every single food was different. I got recommended like 10 different types of diets. So my foods that I was able to eat was like from here to here. And the thing is, I didn't even try to see if they flared me up. I just blindly listened. And that's how I ended up scrunching down the amount of foods that I ate down to like 4 foods. And that was, looking back, not my best idea.
I'm laughing, not because it's funny, but just relatable. And I remember during my recovery at one point thinking, really believing that the only food that I could eat that was healthy was kale, but it had to be organic and it had to be locally grown and in season. I could, everything in my kitchen became poison to me. And it was really fun to be around because I could tell you, no matter what you were eating, I could tell you why it was bad for you. Like it could be carrot sticks, and I had a list of reasons of why you shouldn't be eating that. It gets very stressful when you feel like you can't eat anything.
Yeah, definitely. Gut for sure plays a role in recovery, but not in the way that I thought. Like, it was completely different when I realized what was happening to the body, for sure.
All right, so you're in these Facebook groups, you're getting all stressed out, you're living off of organic kale. Now what?
Yeah, so I've now completely limited my life and have lost pretty much the faith in the doctors because of my belief from these people in these Facebook groups saying you need to, take the natural route. You need to take like, the organic route. So that's what I did. I looked into doctors that specialized in chronic fatigue syndrome, like naturopaths. And I did some regimens there, which were probably less than ideal. For example, I had one doctor put me on nothing but fruit and herbs. And I found myself, I'm gonna be honest with you, Raylan, for like the first month, I found myself getting better off of that. It genuinely did work. But then over time, after like that month passed, it didn't work. And then after that, I found myself doing the celery juice thing. And for like a month, it worked. Like I started feeling like the energy coming back, the symptoms were dissipating, and then it didn't work. And I did this with multiple programs. This was for like the all fruit diet, all the raw vegan diet. And then I switched over to celery juice. And then I switched to like herb tinctures. And I noticed a trend that my parents brought up that was kind of like the first mind shift for me. And they kind of told me, do you think you could possibly feel better because you genuinely believe that this is the way out. Because for me, every single thing that I tried, every modality or program that I tried, I always was all in. It was like, this is the thing that's going to save me. This is for me. And I never really correlated that until now of these things made me feel better. It made me feel like a sense of safety, a sense of relief. And I never correlated that with actually why I felt better. I always related it to the program until the program that I was doing stopped working. And then from there, I just got so fed up with programs that I went to a really dark mental place. And my parents noticed it as well. Um, and then at this point, because my headspace was so bad, I started spiraling physically as well. My symptoms got way, way worse, and my fatigue just got unbearable, and I had pain all over my entire body, and I was still so confused. We're now a year and a half in to since the day of the first crash, and I just begged my parents and said, "You need to take me to the hospital. I don't wanna go to the ER." Well, ER is the first step, but I wanna be admitted. I want help because there's something really terribly wrong, and I feel like if I don't go, I will die. I will pass away. So my parents said, "Okay." We went to the emergency room. I explained to them my entire situation, what I've been going through for a year. This was like the final straw for me when it came to, like, hospitals and doctors. Like, this was like, because I had distrust doctors for so long. So I was like, this is it. They need to find something, or I don't know what else to do. I don't have a plan B. So I told them my story. I was in tears. They admitted me to the hospital, and my bowels were in shambles. For once, I had a doctor right before that happened come in and said, "You know, this could be rare, but all of your symptoms could be caused by a parasite or something inside of your stomach that's causing this. And once we can get that sorted out, you could feel better quite rapidly." And I remember just hearing that. And after the doctor walking out of the room, I remember having energy like I haven't had for the past year. And my symptoms dissipated like almost completely. And I was able to walk around. I was telling my dad, "Hey, I'm gonna get out of this bed. I'm gonna take a few laps around the floor." Just leaving my room, walking up and down the floor. My dad's like, "What? How how do you have this much energy?" And I was like, "I don't know. But something tells me that I'm gonna be good. And this is it. And this is the key." And lo and behold, the next day, I had the operation. They told me, well, not the operation, that the test that they go inside your stomach. And then I remember they said it would take like a day or two to get the results, but I could just chill because I was admitted into the hospital. And that was the time period where I discovered your videos too. I was just watching videos just to pass time at that point, but it was like the chronic fatigue syndrome. But your videos were like a change for me because for once it showed me that people get better. Plus, I had the hope on top of that that I was going to get out of this with my situation. And then lo and behold, the doctor comes back into the room and then tells me that they couldn't find anything in my stomach. And my heart just dropped. And when I tell you the amount of anxiety flooded into my body after that, like all my symptoms and my fatigue came back. They discharged me after that. I I didn't know what to do. I was completely lost at that point. And then after that, I just stayed in that really dark place for like a month or two. And then I ended up getting COVID. And not like this most recent strain, like the first strain, the one that kills people. So, and my entire family ended up getting that strain. It didn't affect my dad too much, but it affected my mom severely and it affected me severely. I was out of commission for like 4 weeks. And the funny thing is, when I had COVID, like when I was actually sick and fighting something, I actually felt better than when I was like dealing with the CFS and the chronic fatigue, which was so strange. But then after I was done fighting that off and I was just resting, the CFS just came flooding right back. And that's when a new forum popped up. That's when a new discussion came up of all of these people having debilitating symptoms, debilitating anxiety, gut issues, brain fog, all this stuff caused by COVID. caused by essentially a really, really bad flu, which is what triggered me back in 2019 was I got a flu. It wasn't COVID, but it was a flu that set me off and developed something called long COVID. So I kind of put the pieces together like long COVID sounds a lot like post viral fatigue, which sounds a lot like CFS. This could very well be the same thing. So I did what I knew what to do, which was go back into the Facebook forums, but this time I entered the long COVID community. And in the long COVID community, yes, there were people experiencing essentially the same thing I was, but the tone was a little bit different because in the CFS community, it's more of a you're stuck in this, you're never going to get out, don't even try type of thing. And the vibe around the long COVID community is this is going to last a while, it's going to suck, but by the way, it gets better and people get out of this. You just got to be patient and just kind of deal with it while it sucks for now, but you'll be fine. So I noticed a lot more people were recovering from the long COVID community after like 6 months. And a lot of their stories, because they do like an every Friday, you post like what helped you get out for people who are fully recovered and on the other side and are kind enough to tell you how they got out. And a lot of their stories pointed back to the autonomic nervous system. And that's when I had like a major mind shift of like, I almost had like Vietnam flashbacks of like me being in the hospital, the guy telling me I was going to be okay. And just from that news, I felt better. Every time I started a program and I felt safe because I thought this was the thing that was going to save me, I felt better for that month. And then just linking everything back and tying it back to I did not feel better because of those programs. I did not feel better because I was at the hospital. I felt better because I felt safe. I felt better because I felt comfort, reassurance, because I had hope. And the nervous system, when you think of nervous system, you think of fight or flight, you think of anxiety, you think of being safe. So that's when I tied it together and I was like, I have a nervous system problem.
That is fascinating. I've never had anyone explain their experience of being both in the ME/CFS and the long COVID groups, and I hadn't thought about that, but that makes a lot of sense. And recurrent theme in all of the interviews that I do for a lot of people is how important mindset is, and how important belief in recovery is, and how important hope is, and keeping your stress down. So yeah, I feel like after this video, the long COVID groups are going to be flooded with all the people from the ME/CFS groups. But hey,
Yeah.
if it's helpful, yeah, that's really good insight. So
And
what did you do with that information?
from there, once I found out that I could possibly have just a nervous system problem, I went on YouTube and I found this one specific channel. It was a very general name. It was just called CFS Recovery, but it was CFS Recovery with the approach of handling a very hypersensitive nervous system. And it was led by this guy named Miguel who runs the program. And Miguel, he completely breaks down what is happening to the body, but like in a simple enough way where somebody like me could understand. Um, so what I did was I just watched a ton of his videos because he has like hundreds of videos on his channel. And eventually I bit the bullet and I joined the program. And he pretty much was my mentor for the past like 7 to 8 months. And from there, he pretty much gave me my life back. Now knowing that it was actually a nervous system issue that I was experiencing this entire time. And so now that I'm fully recovered on the other side, Miguel has actually asked me to become a coach in the program as well. So he's somebody who's also had CFS, who's recovered, created his own program. So it's not like he's just saying this because he studied it. He's been through it. I just wish I met him a little bit earlier, but I guess everything happens for a reason at the right time, huh?
All right. Well, we promised everybody at the beginning of this video that you were going to show us exactly what is in this program and exactly what you did to recover. So can you do that for us?
So the program covers honestly four main stages. The first stage consists of understanding what is happening to the body, which essentially what it is your nervous system has gone from just normal to a hypersensitive state. And that can happen either one of two ways. So the first way is that you can have a very, very type A personality and just a really go, 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 pushing yourself all day, every day. When you hear the word nervous system, you automatically associate it with being nervous, like a nervous person or anxiety. That's not technically the case. You could work yourself to death and be beating the crap out of your nervous system unconsciously and not realizing what's happening. And over time, as your nervous system kind of takes that beating over and over and over again, it becomes sensitive, just like everything else. It's almost kind of like picking a scab that needs to heal. You'd never let it heal, so it just becomes more and more and more sensitive. And over time, just like me, I developed symptoms, an onset of symptoms that happened very slowly until you had that one thing, which was like a flu or a virus that ends up pushing you over the edge. You could have that type of situation, or you could have a situation where you have a really nasty virus like COVID or a very terrible traumatic event happen to you. And you can skip all those steps I just said and just go into full blown CFS and have no idea what was going on other than your life just got rocked and now you're in this place. That happens a lot of the time, like I said, with people who get COVID. That happens a lot of times with people who have extremely traumatic events. It happens a lot of times with people who get vaccines, because what it does is it's powerful enough to beat the crap out of your nervous system and leave it in a very hypersensitive state, in a state of just rotating, flaring symptoms, in a state of hyper awareness, feeling buzzed, and tons of fatigue. So understanding that it is your hypersensitive nervous system, because at the end of the day, the nervous system's job is to do one thing, and that's to keep you alive. And that's okay when that happens in small bursts. It's actually normal. It's healthy to have that in very small bursts. It means that your protection mechanism on your body is working. The issue is that when it becomes prolonged and kind of stuck in a permanent state and it doesn't know how to get unstuck, this is where the illness kind of takes shape, it takes form, and it becomes what we know every day. So now the thing that was in the way becomes the way of life. So that's step one of what's happening to the body. And then step two, what we teach is the implementation of how to get out of that, how to get unstuck. And so you have to really come to the realization of, normal people don't have debilitating fatigue. Normal people don't have all of these symptoms. Normal people can walk. Normal people can read. Normal people can eat stuff that you can't eat. Your entire life is set up backwards to a normal person, right? So in order to go from backwards to back to normal, you have to kind of take a backwards approach to things. So your reaction to how we associated with the illness needs to be reversed. So for me, every time a symptom came up, I worried. Every time a heart palpitation came up, I freaked out. Every time I went a little bit too far out of my comfort zone and I paid for it, I would feel very discouraged. And that's the type of mentality, that's the type of headspace and energy that keeps you going down this path of where you're going. If you want things to flip, Miguel told me that you kind of have to take the opposite approach, and then your life will essentially reverse back into normalcy. And what that looks like was essentially what he taught me is that kind of you not like graded exercise. I don't like the phrase graded exercise because what I associate that with is exercise like gradually without taking a break, regardless of how you feel. That's not what we're trying to achieve at all. What you want to essentially do is find your comfort zone, wherever that is once you find your balanced zone, you want to gently nudge yourself above your balanced zone, outside of your comfort level a little bit. And then inevitably symptoms will flare up. But this time, we're going to approach it different. Instead of being discouraged, instead of being sad, instead of feeling anxious and worried and feeling regret, we want to feel calm. We want to feel neutral. We want to feel almost a sense of kind of like you just had a win almost. Miguel explained it to me in a way of where, when you work out and you get sore and then you just rest. And then once you start to feel better, you'll go back and you just go a little bit harder. But do you ever freak out when your body gets sore or it gets, no, that doesn't happen. But that for some reason is what we're doing here in this illness, because instead of being sore, we have symptoms that we are afraid are going to kill us. So that was my approach, was we found that balance zone. I nudged myself out of that balance zone a little bit. I flared mild symptoms, and then I pulled back, stayed calm, stayed neutral. Then when I started feeling better, I allowed myself to recharge for a few days. And then I nudged myself again out of that balance, out of my comfort zone, just a little bit more than before. And that's how I slowly was able to dig myself out of this illness. When I say finding your balanced zone, everybody has to find their balance zone before they can make progress. That's the one thing that we noticed that keeps people stuck. Because if you study people with ME/CFS and long COVID, it's always one extreme or the other. So we have like three types of people that are in the program. It's like team cognitive, team physical, and then the people who are balanced. Team cognitive, you'll notice, are people that can handle a lot of screen time. They can read books, they can play video games, they can watch TV. They're up here cognitively. Physically, they can't do much of anything, right? And then you have team physical, who can, you're not so limited. You can go to the grocery store. You could take a walk every day if you wanted to. But the thing is, these people can't look at screens. These people can't read books. These people cannot handle a lot of emotional stress. So what we want to do is, these two types of people are on completely opposite sides of the spectrum. We want to create kind of like a balance. You want to find that kind of balance zone. And what that looks like, for example, if you're team cognitive, for example, and you have a lot of cognitive ability, but no physical ability, what we ask you to do is pull back the cognitive ability, your screen time, your emotional stressors, your book reading, all that critical thinking. Tone it down, dial it down, even if you think it's not causing you any symptoms, because most of the time you feel like it won't. But once you pull that back, you'll notice your physical energy starts to go back up and balance. Now we're 50-50 cognitive, 50-50 physical. This is your balanced state. And then once you find that balanced state, you can push a little bit, flare mild symptoms. When it flares up, you want to stay calm, you want to stay neutral, and just wait for the symptom flare to go away. This period could take anywhere from 3 days to 3 weeks. And then once you start to feel better, go again. But when you go again, keep it balanced. When we say nudge a little bit out of your comfort zone, we're talking about doing a little bit of a walk, doing a little bit of screen time, reading some books, some light stretches. Make sure when you expand, it's well-rounded and you're covering cognitive and physical, because we don't want you to lean too much to one side. Because we notice if people are very lean to one side and then they push out of their comfort zone, they'll do this. It'll just lean here, go right back, lean here, go right back. And then they make no progress. And then people feel like they get stuck. And that's your way out.
This is really interesting. I'm starting to notice more and more overlap. I used to think of things like pacing programs, brain training programs, graded exercise therapy, nervous system programs as completely separate things. But the more people I talk to, the more I'm starting to see a lot of overlap in what those programs are doing. I mean, a lot of what you're explaining reminds me of my approach to recovery, which included something similar to graded exercise therapy. But, I didn't think of it, all these other elements of things that I was incorporating, that I was addressing my nervous system, that I was that there was an element of retraining my brain. So this is really fascinating to hear. And for me, helps me understand why it can look like a lot of different things work for people to recover, but maybe there's more similarities in these approaches that we're all using than we realize.
This whole illness is essentially teaching everybody how to stay in the middle, how to be balanced, because our entire lives, we've just been living to the extremes. Like I said, when you nudge yourself, when it is time to expand, you want to do it gently. That's another roadblock that we see people get into, is like when they feel better, you don't nudge, you go way up here and then you pay for it way down here. Now your body is not receptive to staying calm and neutral. Your body is just kind of holding on for dear life because you're having symptoms that are now beyond the scope of just being able to stay calm because they're too intense. When it's flaring up in a mild way, that's when it's much more manageable. That's the sweet spot, and that's where the magic happens.
And this explains too why in my recovery, because I would reach a point where I thought I was pretty much fully recovered, but then I'd introduce something new into my life. It might not have been exercise, but it might have been another layer of cognitive stuff, whether work or school. But every time I added something new, I realized, okay, I'm not fully there yet, because I would have some symptom flares and I would have to adjust to that. And the way I defined being fully recovered, and I don't know that that is something that really exists. I've maybe symptom free for long periods of time. But when I finally got to a point where I felt comfortable saying that was when I'd introduced everything I could think of. Like there was nothing left to add into my life.
Right.
I'd adjusted to it all and I could do it all and there were no more symptoms. So it makes a lot of sense, the way you're explaining it about how our body adjusts to all these different things.
And you know what the crazy thing is, Raelan, is that you could understand what's happening to the body. And I just explained to everybody how the implementation works and, how to find, what you need to do as far as just like pulling back and finding the balance and then being able to implement it. The thing that's the most important that people often neglect is how unbelievably crucial it is while you're implementing it to be in a good headspace. That's the thing that people really overlook. When you are expanding and nudging out of your comfort zone, you want to be in a good headspace. You want to be excited about it. You want to look forward to it. You know that the flare up is coming, but that's okay because you know that it's coming and you know this flare up is on the way, not in the way. And when I say good headspace, I don't just mean like excited and not worried. I'm talking about if you're fighting with your husband or your girlfriend, if you're in a bad mood, if you're upset, you're not in a good headspace. I wouldn't recommend you expand that day. So that's actually really important too. Also, as well as still understanding all those concepts and even being in a good headspace, people could still find it difficult to recover because they have specific personality traits and roadblocks that hold them back. For example, you can know all this information, but for some reason, you could be having a really tough time staying calm and neutral when the symptoms flare up because you have trauma. You could have a really tough time with gently nudging because you keep going way too much. And then when it's time to rest, you go completely just numb and you just don't move at all. That shows me that you're still having that extreme personality, that boom bust. You do way too much. And then when it's time to rest, you do way too little. So that's a personality trait of just like type A personality. You don't really know what the middle is. So that could be a personality trait as well. But the thing is with personality traits is that they can be changed and you can change as a person and mold your personality in a way where it works with the implementation of recovery and you can accelerate and pretty much go back to normal and get back on with your life. Because that's what everybody wants, essentially, at the end of the day, is just to get on with your life. But when you do it and you're finally on the other side, you'll realize you're a much more balanced person because you can't get out of this illness until you learn balance, until you learn to be patient, until you learn not to go to such extremes. That's why you hear so many stories of people when they do recovery stories and interviews saying like, I had to do deep digging. I had to go on a spiritual journey. My ego had to die. In reality, what it was at its core was you had to change your personality or else this was not going to work for you. That's what it was. You can call it whatever you want, but that's what it was. If you don't mold yourself to be able to implement this stuff, you're not getting out of this. So that's what the program essentially teaches at the end of the day. The thing I love about the program is that it really holds your hand because there's so many intricacies on top of implementing this stuff and being able to point out personality roadblocks and helping people through that need to be addressed too. Like we mentioned earlier, the gut and the diet. That's a thing that actually affects the body. Like the nervous system, when it's not working correctly, you're going to have some blood sugar issues. You need a snack every couple hours. What does that look like for you? It's dependent completely on person to person. Same thing with insomnia. You find that to be a major roadblock for a lot of people. That was really essential. So what we're doing, Raelan, Miguel and I, we found this information to be really invaluable, but also we've been in everyone's shoes where we've been to the doctors, we spent our life savings and all our retirement money on supplements only to find out it was the nervous system. And by the time that information was available and a program was available, we can't afford it because funds are just depleted. So what Miguel and I are going to do, actually starting in the next few weeks, is we are creating a course detailing exactly, like, I think it's about 10 or 11 episodes. And I'm going to be doing the episodes and putting it in our Facebook group. And it's free. You can just join our Facebook group. It's a private group, but you can join and watch all these episodes. What's happening to the body, exact steps on how to get out, and then finding that balance, what type of person you are, which person you lean towards, and then how to implement it properly, the importance of being in a good headspace and how to handle the mentality of when you flare up, and then defining your specific personality traits of what makes you you and who you are. And that all that stuff is going to be in the Facebook group, and we're doing it completely for free because you are entitled to that information. It's the people that do things unconsciously that aren't aware, or they just need an extra help or hand holding a little bit to get yourself out of the illness because you've been sick for so long, you're just done and you're stuck and you just need that extra assistance. That's what the program's for. But for anyone else, we feel like this information should be free. You should be entitled to this, and it shouldn't be hidden behind a paywall because you've been through enough, to be completely honest. So, but the group is also there to be used as a resource as well. That is a paid feature, the group, because what you do is you get access to myself and you get access to Miguel 2 hours per Zoom call, 2 Zoom calls a week for until you recover. And I don't care if it takes the rest of your life. That's what you're paying for, is coaching until you recover. I don't care if it takes 5 years. You will keep coming to the calls until you are better. We are not giving up on you. And this is a group environment as well. You have the coaching calls with us and you have a group environment as well. And it's very powerful when you're in a group environment because everyone understands what's happening. People support each other, and it's a very positive space as opposed to Facebook, which can be sometimes negative. Because when you're in a hypersensitive nervous system thing and you have anxiety and your body thinks you have a saber-toothed tiger in front of you and you're lost in the jungle, you feel a lot safer, at least if you're in a tribe. So those are the resources that we're offering everybody, as well as Miguel has a book as well. I think he priced it as low as he could, like as humanly possible, so the most people could have the access to it. But just wanted to let you guys know that those are the resources that we are giving out for everybody.
Okay, so you have the Facebook group, which is free to join. That's going to have the video series that explains everything that the program does. So all of that is there for free. And then the other option for people who want to or are able to pay is essentially the paid group program, which includes the one-on-one coaching and access to a group, a supportive group as well. Okay. Yes. Okay. And of course, for those of you watching, all of this will be linked in the video description. So I highly recommend you check out, at the very least, the free Facebook group. I mean, really, what have you got to lose? And Miguel's book will be linked there as well.
Yeah, no, thank you, Raelan, for the opportunity to be able to speak. And I just hope that even this interview helps even at least one person, because when I was really down in the depths, I was that one person that you really made my day that day as well. So I hope this can act like that for somebody else, even if it's just one person. But I do appreciate it. I have Miguel and myself have both dedicated our lives to make sure that everybody goes through this quicker than we did.
Well, thank you so much, Junior. I appreciate this so much. I think this video has been so packed full of really useful, actionable information, which is incredible, which is exactly what we're trying to do here. So I appreciate you and Miguel very much. And those of you watching, also, thank you so much. You guys are always so wonderful. As always, I'm sending you big hugs and a reminder in case you need it today that whatever you're facing, whatever life is currently throwing at you, you have totally got this. And that's it for today. Thank you for watching. I hope you found this helpful. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope to see you in the next video.